I call a member for Adelaide.
Port Adelaide.
Port Adelaide.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Well, that was quite a magical mystery tour from the member for Swan, who's a very popular member across both sides of the aisle. I think someone must have written that for him and held his arm behind his back and forced him to read it, except for the last bit, which was a nice bit of history. But, Mr Deputy Speaker, as my colleagues have pointed out and as those opposite appear intent on denying, 1st of July is firming as a nightmare for ordinary Australians. There are just a series of measures driven by this Prime Minister and this government that are going to hurt ordinary Australians. Of course, as my colleague, the Shadow Minister for Employment, pointed out, it's going to be a day of joy for the big end of town. Those earning $1 million are going to receive a tax cut of $16,400 on the 1st of July. But ordinary Australians are going to take hit after hit. They're going to take blow after blow as a direct result of decisions by this government. The Shadow Minister referred particularly to the penalty rates decision by the Industrial Commission, an unprecedented decision to cut the take-home pay of hundreds of thousands of Australian workers with no offset. There has been legislation in this parliament that we've pleaded with the government to support to prevent those 700,000 workers from receiving a pay cut, giving them opportunity after opportunity to do the right thing by some of the lowest paid workers in Australia, and they've just shunned us. But not importantly shunning us, shunning those 700,000 workers. And households across Australia, many of which will be dealing with the impact of penalty rate cuts for those who work on Sundays in retail, in hospitality, in pharmacy, are also receiving notice from their power companies, AGL, Origin Energy and Energy Australia, that they will be having price hikes of up to 20%. So New South Wales, the member for Hughes, my friend the member for Hughes, is from New South Wales. And I'm sure we'll hear something about renewable energy. But the member for Hughes in New South Wales, a state governed for 6 years by a Liberal government, under 4 years of federal government, is facing power price increase of 16% from AGL, 16.1% from Energy Australia and 19.6% from Origin Energy. And we know exactly why, because report after report has told us why, including the recent report from the Chief Scientist, and the key driver is the policy paralysis in this building under this Prime Minister and his predecessor, the member for Warringah, because wholesale prices under this government have doubled. We saw the numbers in the Australian newspaper, the newspaper favoured by members as opposite, in an article by David Crowe, who showed that even under the carbon tax, the dreaded carbon tax, wholesale prices were around $58 a megawatt-hour, and now they're $130. $130. Now, of course, under the carbon price mechanism, there was the household assistance package. Pensioners received increases. We tripled the tax-free threshold, more than covered the impact in energy prices and other prices of the carbon price mechanism. In my state of South Australia, the impact of the carbon price mechanism was about 4.5%. In New South Wales, they're dealing with 20% power price increases. At the same time, wages are as flat as they have ever been. As flat as they have ever been. People are actually receiving real wage cuts under this government. And just to put the cherry on the top, just the cherry on the top of the outrage, at the same time, this government is going to cut the pension by $365 a year for new pensioners. Hundreds of thousands of pensioners into the future will have their pension cut by $365 at a time when we're seeing record power price increases. Now, we know this government, as my friend the member for Grainler has said time and time again, this government had a plan to get into government but no plan to government. For 4 years we have had no energy policy in this country. The Finkel report has given us an opportunity to work across the aisle to put downward pressure on the power price increases that the member for Hughes is going to have to explain to his constituents over the coming weeks in New South Wales, but we still don't quite know whether this Prime Minister and the Minister for Energy will be given the permission by the member for Hughes and others in the coalition party room to do the right thing by the nation and actually start to put downward pressure on power prices in this country.